Hello there and welcome to Foreign Affairs. In this edition of Foreign Affairs, we're bringing you a special package we call the Intergenerational Professional Dialogue. This is the second in our series. The last time we had a conversation, it was with a first-generation Foreign Service officer, Maximilian Akoe, who is an ambassador emeritus, sharing his wide range of experience with us in foreign service. Today, we talk about the Ghana Armed Forces as a tool of foreign policy. And we are glad to be hosted by one man who retired from the service as a Major General or as a Chief of Defense Staff. I'm talking about Major General Edwin Sam, retired. He's our guest for today, and if you are pleased to be a part of the audience, let's welcome Major General Edwin Sam, retired, with a round of applause.
Thank you.
Major Edwin Sam, retired, welcome to this
You are making a mistake already. I'm not a major.
Okay.
Major
General. And of course, the rank matters a lot.
Correct.
In the service.
The difference is 4 or 5 steps.
So we're about to discover a lot. And we're so pleased to be having you joining us in our second of the series that we're hosting. Let's talk about, first of all, the armed forces itself, the vision, the reason for which it was set up. Many of us through studies generally know that, yes, the armed forces is to ensure territorial integrity. But beyond that, when we even look at foreign policy, what would you say is the vision? And in the context of the Ghana Armed Forces, would you say is that unique thing about the service?
Well, well, first of all, good morning. The Ghana Armed Forces was set up in the colonial days, but first it was to promote the interests of the colonial power or to project the interests, but I am going to concern myself with the period when it became relevant to me. In other words, from the 60s onwards. But nothing has changed. The difference is that the armed forces is always set up to protect the territorial integrity of the nation. And then its second role is to provide or support the civilian government and the provision of security within the country. So the support of the armed forces after taking the initial stage is to support, say, the civil authority in the maintenance of law and order. These are the two main functions of our armed forces. The projection of our armed forces as part of the foreign policy as part of our roles in supporting the UN in dealing with peacekeeping, So these are the areas generally where we function. Right. The Ghana Armed Forces at the time of independence, that was 57, consisted of about 2 or 3 battalions, or part of the West African Frontier Force, which included Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Gambia. But Kwame Nkrumah wanted our own. So immediately we took over. He took steps to dismantle or take Ghana Armed Forces out of the West African Frontier Force. So at independence, we had a Ghana Army, still officered by 80% British. The ranks were all, also the ordinary soldiers indeed made of mostly Northerners, mainly the Fulanis, the Hausas, the Bazarbarimis, and so on. So, in fact, the language spoken in the armed forces was Hausa. apart from English.
Was it by convention or?
Yes, because before then it was felt that soldiers, crazy people down south shouldn't be in the army. So it was mostly, the soldiers were mostly from the north. So you join the armed forces, you learn Hausa. And in the process, to teach them English, they started recruiting certain teachers, some of them from Achimota School and so on and so forth, and other schools, who were made sergeants and NCOs to teach the soldiers how to speak English. So you came and you met an instructor who is a Hausa man or Fulani. When he speaks, you understand, but it's all broken. They learn all this from the armed forces. So in 1960, the first test came. When the Congo crisis came, the Kwame Nkrumah was one of the first to put his foot where his mouth was. When the trouble started at the independence, the Belgians never believed that the Congolese could run themselves. And of course it was true, because at the time of independence, I'm sure most of you have seen the map of the Congo DR. They had only 12 graduates, the whole country, 12. Now this was what they were supposed to use to run the country. They didn't have the manpower. And there was Kasavubu as the president, Lumumba as the prime minister, and then, like you had regional ministers or regional commissioners or whatever. In the south, this rich country, in the south was the richest part, the Katanga region. You had this guy called Chombe, who decided to break away. So that is where the trouble started. Lumumba believed in Kwame Nkrumah. So he even came here in 58, he was here. He believed he was a leftist. And Kwame Nkrumah also believed this. Kwame Nkrumah supported him, backed him. Right. Kasavubu was an old man, a more moderate chap, who still believed in Belgium. So there was a rift straight away between the prime minister and the president. And then Kasavubu decided Chombe decided to break away. So the country was in confusion. Right. And UN decided to send troops to go and settle things. That is where our troops went for the first time. At that time, Kwame Nkrumah realized that the way the armed forces was, he could never really get what he wanted as an instrument of his project needs, his foreign. So immediately he decided that he will have his own military academy to train Ghanaian officers to take over from the British. And so hitherto we had what was called a regular officers special training school at Teshi, which was training African officers and sending them to Sandhurst after about 6 months to go and train as officers or months. But 2, 3, he wanted a bulk to take over. So on the 1st of April 1960, the Ghana Military Academy was formed to produce officers to officer the Ghana Armed Forces. And just before the first intake was commissioned, of which I happened to be one, Kwame Nkrumah decided that he had had enough of the British. At that time, the CDS was a British, General H.T. Alexander. And there were virtually 2 brigades, which was the Southern Command and the Northern Command. Southern Command was in Accra, Northern Command was in Kumasi. The Southern Command was for the coastal area, you know, Eastern, Greater Accra, Eastern Volta, Western, Central. And then the Northern, Kumasi was the center, dealt with Ashanti, Brong-Ahafo. In those days, Northern, Upper East, and Upper West. Then, our first crisis in Congo occurred. First of all, we were sent there to support Lumumba. We were sent there to support the Prime Minister, Lumumba. And the rest of the Western powers were actually against Lumumba because he was leftist. Now, we were officered by British officers. So Nkrumah realized that his messages and commands were not going through. You know, these people were taking orders from somewhere else, either Whitehall or something else. Our first crisis came when the Ghanaians let their guard down. They thought the Congolese soldiers or military were their friends. But there were signs of mutiny, and then the Lumumba's Minister for Interior came on a visit and went. I think we had very close units together. We went and warned those chaps there, the Congolese army, that if they didn't behave, they would be dealt with. So these people who were our friends thought that they were going to use the Ghanaian troops to disarm them and so on. Without provocation, they attacked the Ghanaian soldiers and killed a lot of our chaps, including some British officers. That is what you have if you go to Burma camp now. Mm-hmm. You see before Nicholson said there's Congo Junction, where the sign that is there is a remembrance of those who were killed at a place called Port Frankie. So the Ghanaians hit back. As for that one, we don't talk about it. But we also took our share of this thing. We hit back. We couldn't sit. But we suffered quite a few casualties. Then our second crisis came when that one was self-inflicted. We had the 3rd Battalion of Infantry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Hansen. You know, in those days, every 5 years, the armed forces rotated. The battalions were rotated. So, for instance, 2nd Battalion went to Takrady. The 5th Battalion came to Arakan. 6th Battalion went to Tamale. You know, the British did it. So we're continuing with the same, I don't know whether culture or this thing. They didn't want you to stay at one place for too long. 5 years you should change, rotate. So 3rd Battalion, that was in Congo. That was Admiral Hansen's system. You know, Ghanaians. They go to battle with something under their beds. They don't want their wives to touch those things. You know. So, believe it or not, they mutinied because of this. That they were being rotated when they were not in. And you know, some of them probably felt their survival was based on what is holding them in Accra. I don't know. Admiral Hansen was taken for dead. He was beaten. But luckily, in those days, we used to go with our doctors and dentists. And there was a Captain Ajete, later on Colonel Ajete, JC Ajete, who worked on him and repaired him before he was flown to UK. In fact, he was given a medal for it because when he got to UK, they were surprised at what was done in the jungle to revive Admiral Hansen, later on Admiral. So when Hansen came from UK, first of all, the unit was disbanded. completely disbanded. And I think I've gone ahead of myself. Before this Admiral Hansen thing came, Kwame Nkrumah had already made up his mind that the British must leave the system. So just in September, I can't get the date, September 1961, one fine morning, he's fired all the British, all. And so the armed forces didn't have officers. We had very, very few officers. So those of us who were in the first intake training, we finished. We were commissioned on the 30th of September 1961. The second intake, which was 6 months away, which had to be commissioned 6 months away, were added to us and commissioned. They didn't finish their syllabus. So that we can get officers to run the system. So when we were commissioned, it was interesting. You came and you found somebody who was a lieutenant yesterday. Today is acting captain, temporary major. And somebody who was a captain is now acting major lieutenant, temporary lieutenant. They had to put people to fit in those. So there were opportunities for all of us, except that those of us who are coming from the academy were too junior. So that was the time when Kwame Nkrumah appointed the first Ghanaian Chief of Defense Staff, Major General S.J.A. Otu. He was the first Ghanaian Chief of Defense Staff, Stephen Joseph Asamoah Otu. And then they had to appoint Army Commander General Joseph Arthur Ankra, J. Ankra. Then they needed an Air Force. They appointed Commodore de Graaf Hayford. All these people came through the ranks. And then the Navy, Admiral Hansen came from UK, and he was transferred from the Army to the Navy to command the Navy. So he became a naval man. He left the Army and became a naval man. So these were the people who started the armed forces, Ghana Armed Forces as it was. They were all what we call in those days short service officers, because they didn't go through Sandhurst. They were trained in the short service courses in UK, Mons and Eton Hall. So they had to convert from short service to regular course. And when they weren't quite confident of themselves, the first person to take the bull by the horns was General Otu. You know, he was a major or something. He attempted, and he got it. So he became the first Ghanaian regular officer. Then, so the others took courage. Another one called Brigadier Michel. He died before the sacking took place. He also took his chance and he qualified. Ankra took his chance and he got it. The fourth officer was one Major J. Kobna. He didn't get it, he failed. And he resigned from the armed forces and joined the police. Later on, he became the IGP of the police. So this is how these senior officers became. General Otu is GH1. Brigadier Michel is GH2. General Ankra is GH3. Kobna should have been number 4. But after that, we all follow. The numbers followed after that. Now, the Ghana Armed Forces had to expand very quickly. Nkrumah, indeed, was thinking of at least a division. And a division consists of 3 brigades. One brigade, it's maybe about 3,000 people complete, One brigade is about 3,000 plus. And he wanted 3 of them. I don't know whether we had the money. Our country at that time, the population was small. The population was very small, but still, this is what he wanted. So there were expansions here and there, and we didn't even have the officers. But still, we did our training, a lot of our training outside, either in UK or India or Pakistan, because these were the British systems. Later on, we started going to other places, US, Italy, and so on. So when we were about to be commissioned, this thing took place, and these changes took place. And a number of us 4 of us, were matched the CDS. So to be interviewed, for one of us to become his aide-de-camp. So I was selected. So I became the first Ghanaian ADC to the first Ghanaian CDS. It was a nice job, because we used to go to Flagstaff House a lot. I saw Nkrumah very often, and so on. Cocktails, dinners, all important occasions, you were there with your boss. Like the person you see standing behind, either the head of state or this thing behind, I was always with my boss. So I went places. And one senior officer, the late General Barr, he was then a brigadier, came to my office one day. This job, you don't stay in for too long. Otherwise, your career will suffer. He told me, I didn't believe him. First of all, when we were leaving the academy, I won the academic cane. And the first the senior under officer, one Colonel Seusu, he's passed on. He was the one who won the Sword of Honor. So I was supposed to go to the Reconnaissance Regiment, but I didn't go. I went straight to become ADC. When I got there, dressed like somebody who was going to the armor, I had black sashes. The CDS one look at me. You must always dress like your boss. So go and take those things off. So I wanted to them off. And I became like an infantryman, I was there for getting to 1 year, and I got into big trouble. The CDS wanted to able to send me to places. I didn't want to send the drivers, but I didn't know how to drive. What is the use of an ADC who can't drive? What's the use of an ADC? So I started going to Armed Forces Driving School to learn how to drive. One day, one Sunday, I took the command rover, which was parked in the house, and went to town with it. Coming back, I had arrived in the yard when I fell into a gutter on a Sunday. So the general came out of that. What is it? It's the ADC, sir. He's had a minor accident with a command rover. What? Of all the vehicles in this house, you take... Now, this is an operational vehicle with a radio and a standby in case of operation that is going to use. You take it to town for a jolly ride or what? I was in trouble. So, in those days, they moved the vehicle, sent it away. I was charged. I went before General Ankra. And General Ankra said, told him, you think you're IDC to CDS, so what? You go and take the car and crash it. You will pay and you will learn sense. He downed me. In those days, there were no air conditioners in the offices of the commanders. So the windows were open so you could hear the bosses when they were talking. So I came and sat in front of my office before the CDS office. I could hear my boss talk. After they decided that I should pay, They said the repair of the vehicle took 100 hours at 50, at 10 shillings an hour, so 50 pounds. That was the bill. So the general asked General Nkra, why is he going to pay this? Because my pay was 50 pounds as second lieutenant. Then the General Nkra said, oh, he has to pay. Send him to Congo. He'll go and make some money. Like our people are going to Middle East now and making $30. In those days, it wasn't that much. By the time he comes back, he will have saved enough to pay the debt. So I didn't finish my ADC work. The general agreed, and I was sent to Congo, DRC. That time, Ghana, the battalion in Congo was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel E.K. Kotuka. And interestingly, his adjutant, that is his staff officer, was Captain I.K. Achampo. So I got there and started working. I was given a platoon, and oh my goodness. We were, just as I arrived, the United Nations had given authority to the UN troops to break into Katanga. And we were the unit spearheading the attack. That is Kotuka's unit. We had Swedish, we had other units, but Ghana was spearheading. And interestingly, I was a point platoon commander. My platoon was in the lead. So that morning we went, thank God, we went in and we started firing. In fact, the firing that was coming from there, as I said, the bullet that will hit you, you won't know. You only hear ting, 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 ting. But when we started firing back, the people abandoned their weapons and ran. The Congolese army. So it became easy for us. And we flashed through, collected weapons. So after that, we were given the tasks to look for armed caches around the area. So we started going from farm. The Belgians had huge farms. They were still there. Like in Zimbabwe, as some of you know, the white people had huge farms, and the workers were the blacks. So you go there, you go out with your platoon and you get something, you are praised. You go out and you didn't bring anything, just like going to fish and come back with an empty net. Again, I got into trouble. I went with my platoon. We got into a Belgian's farm. And we started searching. First, we went to the man's own bungalow. Before I could say Jack, my boys had drank this man's whiskey, gin, and they finished everything. Woo! I wasn't watching. I was more interested in getting weapons. So we came out. We got a pistol this big. That was all. So I gathered all the farm workers and I asked them, where are the weapons? They said, there are no weapons here. So I lined them up as I was going to have a firing squad. If you don't tell me where the weapons are, I'm going to finish all of them. And I made a firing squad with my sergeant as the only one who should fire into the air when I counted 10. Young officer. At that time I was maybe 22, 23. I didn't even realize that some people may have heart problem or something. They were begging, crying that they didn't know. I said, if you tell me. I counted 10 and my sergeant fired. Pow! And all of them were down. They thought the shot was at them. I said, no, I don't think there are any weapons here, so let's go back. We have failed, we didn't get anything. But when we were going, we took the farm owner with us to see our commander. When we got there, he didn't have the courage to tell the commander that my boys drank his whiskey and things like that. So they treated me very well. Said everything was fine. So Koteka said, okay, you can go. He went straight to the Swedish commander under which we were working. I narrated everything. So the man wrote a stinker to Koteka. And Koteka replied that the man came here. I interviewed him. And he said everything was fine. Now, nobody was maltreated. So where is this coming from? He headed back. And then, soon afterwards, that's how I learned it. It was time for confidential reports. When I got there, in my confidential reports, I was reckless. So you learn your lessons from these things. When we came back from Congo, I had paid my debts. And everything was moving fine. But this time, I had to do my courses because whilst I was enjoying ADC work, my fellows were getting on. They had done other courses. I was now going to begin. But in order not to fall back, the first promotion exams we went, first of all, there was a course which I wanted to attend when I was ADC. And the general said he didn't have time for that. It will come later. But when I got there, I was there for the first lesson. And then a call came that the general says I should come back. I didn't know that I was on a course. Nobody told him about it, so I should come back. The first lesson we had was called Routine in the Battalion. Everybody knew about it. I didn't know anything. Duty officers' work, this, that. They were talking over my head. But after Congo, I had learned something. So I decided that no, this thing will not happen. On top of that, my first promotion exam, practicals, I flopped. I said, the man they said won an academic cane, he can't even pass his promotion exams. So, like all young officers, we enjoyed ourselves in those days. Either we are going to nightclub or going to stadium for boxing or for football. So I told myself, this will never happen. So anytime we are going, I said, oh, look, I'll follow you. I'll follow you also. Then I'll go into my room. Then I sat down and started cracking. So the next time I went, I passed all the exams. And when I passed, there were so many big holes in the armed forces still. They needed people to attend courses. They didn't have any. And I was still a lieutenant when I started attending captain's courses. So I was a captain when they posted me to go and teach at the School of Infantry, to teach tactics. When I got there, some of my students were majors. It was a little difficult at first. But I told myself that, look, tell them what you know. If there is any difficulty, just don't say anything. Just say, I'll check up and let you know. So if I taught something, somebody, I'm sure some of these majors knew what they were asking me about, but they were testing me. So when you ask me, I'll say, look, I'm not sure about this, but I'll come back tomorrow. I'll find out. And I'll really go and find out and come and tell you what it was. So I had to do my captain to majors exams with them. Again, you are the instructor teaching them. If you go to the exams and you fail, brother. So again, I had to cut out all those funny nightclub things. So I went and did the exams, and that was it. Now I could feel confident to teach. But I was still a captain. And then my promotion came, and I became a major. All this time, Nkrumah was still around. The idea of expanding the armed forces was still there. But we didn't know where the money was coming from. We were too young, but you could see that at least we had an air force, especially the transport section, which flew very well. We had quite a number of ships for the Navy, even though and you saw at one stage in Nkrumah's ambition, he wanted a frigate, which is a much bigger naval ship. And that became news, international news, that we're broke and yet we're buying frigate from the British. This was being built to our specifications. Later on, after the coup, we didn't take it, so the British had to take it. The Air Force, they had planes, transport planes. Oh, it was interesting. You wanted, to the extent that the cargo system was so good. Anytime during the week, if I wanted to go to Takoradi, I just go to the Air Force on certain days. There were scheduled flights. All these were there. Then we had the jets from Italy, the Marquis. In fact, they were flying over Accra a lot of the time. Now they are in Takoradi, but they don't have any anymore now. That was what Rollins was flying. So we had equipment. It's only in the army that things began to go down. As things went on, and Nkrumah was following his dream of this Pan-African thing, he had a training school in the jungle to help train liberation movement chaps. And then, for his own security, after an attempt on his life in Kulungugu, you all heard about Kulungugu. And then there was even another attempt on his life in Flagstaff House by one Amatewi, a private police officer. It became important that Nkrumah had his personal protection. So the POGR was formed, President's Own Guard Regiment was formed. Now, this time, in order that they will be different, he decided to give them training from Soviet Union. They were not, but the biggest mistake they made was that the troops forming the POGR were selected from us. You know, so, I mean, promising officers, this thing. So, eventually, that is what caused the downfall of Kwame Nkrumah. Because these chaps came, they were even marching differently, they were now doing good step, and they were better equipped than the army. You see, they were better equipped than the army. So, it created sort of rift. It was there, the tension was there. And then, so when 66 came, the POGR and the regular army didn't want to fight each other. So that's why. Because if the POGR decided to fight, the regular army could not have matched them. But the same officers, I mean, you train together, why should we fight? You see? So that is why later on, when Rawlins formed the 66 battalion, that is later, much later, all the people were recruited from outside. In other words, they didn't know, they had no affiliation with those in the service. So if they wanted to fight you, then it means they are fighting for their lives. Coming on, Nkrumah wanted, after the experience in Congo, he wanted this African High Command, where he felt if we put our forces together, consisting of the African countries, coming together to form a formidable force to deal especially with the Southern African independence, because those were the difficult areas. So I think they wanted to have the headquarters at Cairo. Or that time, it was later on that Addis came in. Or Accra, as usual. Nkrumah was ready to give Accra as headquarters. So there were conferences here and there. They came, so on. And as we're thinking about how the African High Command was going to be formed, then of course, the coup came. And after that, the dream of having the African High Command seemed to have died, So then, in the armed forces, I myself, after teaching at the School of Infantry for 3 years, I went to 4 Battalion, and immediately I was sent to Staff College in 1969. When I went to Staff College in India, at Wellington, which is in southern India. So when I came back, I was sent to the Army headquarters. I went to see, then the Army commander at the time was General Ado, J.S. Ado. General D.K. Ado, D.K. Ado, Dan Ado. And the CDS was Otu Jr., M.A. Otu. He was the junior brother of General S.J. Otu. In fact, in the interim, he had also transformed into an Air Force officer and became a pilot. At that age, he flew. So he took command of the Air Force, and from there he became CDS. So he was then CDS, and Ado was then the Army commander. The Navy commander was then Commodore Quay, Philemon Quay. He's also passed on. But in the interim, let me tell you of something of what happened in 1966. In 1966, I remember very well, there were rumors all over that there could be a coup. Now, some of us young officers, we didn't know where this was coming from. At that time, I was just a young officer at the Army headquarters as a staff officer. And I remember on the coup took place on the 24th of February 1966. On the 21st of February, a week before then, as staff officer in charge of training at the Army headquarters, the military police, headed by one Captain von Bakustein. He was Baku. He changed his name from Baku to von Bakustein. It comes from the Volta region. So von Bakustein applied that he wanted permission to do an exercise. In those days, if you want to do any exercise, you have to bring, you seek permission from the headquarters. When it's coming, you attach the type of exercise you're going to do. So von Bakustein bought his thing. He wanted it without the exercise, the type of exercise he wanted to do. So I said, no, this exercise cannot take place unless you bring us the instructions. At that time, the Army commander was General Bauer. And he praised me because he went through all the correspondence that left his office in a float in the morning. We'll go through. If there's anything, we'll call your attention. So he praised me for refusing to allow the exercise to take place. So when I went to the office the next morning, he said, hey, for Bauer to praise you. First of all, you will even correct your English before you know. So, 22nd night, I was in my room, poor boy lying down, one my boss, one Colonel Trimbrema. Later on became Brigadier Trimbrema. He called me. In those days, we didn't have any mobile phone, so you had to go to the telephone duty officer. He will call the duty officer and they will come and call you from your room to go and take the telephone. Is that Edwin Sam? I said, yes, sir. Do you know of an exercise taking place, an exercise by the military police taking place in Accra? I said, Sir, I don't know anything about it. In fact, they applied for permission and we refused them. Well, do you know that this exercise is painting the picture that Tema has been attacked and that they are stragglers. People are running away from Tema, so they are trying to control the crowd and things like that. I said, sir, I don't even know the type of instructions, exercise they are doing. So I don't know. Well, do you know that this exercise is being misconstrued to mean that there's a coup? I said, hey, in those days, Kwame Nkrumah's time, at that time, when they pin anything on you straight in Sawam, before you could say Jack, you were in trouble. When my boss said this, I said, what is this man talking about? Anyway, go and think about it. Tomorrow morning, when you come to my office, I went straight to a colleague of mine. I sat in the office with one Colonel Alija. I said, Ben, look at what Trimbrema is saying. This military police, they went and did the exercise. And they say, so the man is saying that he doesn't know anything about. I should think of what I'm going to say. Hey. So the next morning, I got to the office, picked the float file. When I went to his office, the military police commander was already there. And he fired at him. This was 23rd morning. Meanwhile, the thing has really become so serious that it even caused a rift between the army commander, General Bauer, and the director of military intelligence, one, Colonel Hassan, whose son is in foreign service. Yeah. He must have retired recently or something like that. So, then they said there was going to be a board of inquiry, that we should be prepared to, come and defend ourselves. Then the next day, 24th, the thing happened. With that night, I remember we were watching a film in the mess. I remember even the title of the film. It was called The Secret Invasion. I remember. Once we were watching this film, this officer will get up and go. That officer will get up and say, what the hell is going on? We didn't know anything. So, apparently, those of us in the headquarters, army headquarters, we were not supposed to know. So we went to bed. Then the unit officers, those who were hinted, they left. And the whole thing, when it came to crunch, depended on two places. First, the Flagstaff House, which was very well secured, under the command of Colonel Zanlerugu. And one of his lieutenants was Oting, now a priest. He's seen too much, he's now a priest, a Presbyterian priest. And then at Shire Hills, they had their bigger weapons, which they could just move into Accra and blast things away under Colonel Tete. As I said, they all came from us. So when the fight started, the firing started, they got the wind of it. Quickly, they moved Madame Fataya and the children. At that time, Kwame Nkrumah was on his way to Hanoi, going to settle create peace. So they took Madame Fatah and the children to the first switchback road building, on the opposite Christ the King. That's the Egyptian ambassador's residence. So they went and put Madame and the children. Means now the Flagstaff House was open to attack. Now, they were fighting each other. The commander Zanlerugu and his officers and the WO1, who happened to be my sergeant in the Congo, was one of those who had picked, a tough guy who was picked to join the POGR. One, Sergeant Major Ali Nacha. His children are prominent. One of them is a tax expert now, Dr. Anilachi, that's the father. So they saw the situation. Why should we shed blood? So they just raised the white flag. That was the end of the fight. Otherwise, it would have been very bloody. And on top of that, if the commander at Shah Hills, who happened to be also one of us, Colonel Tete, if he had decided to move on Accra, I think would have failed. But it didn't move. So the coup succeeded. But you see, if you were around at that time, you will see that Ghanaians had already had enough of Kwame Nkrumah. Because we didn't understand what he was trying to do. His ideas were outside, thinking about the liberation and things like that. Meanwhile, the economy was suffering, And I remember in Parliament, one of the MPs asked, was it Joe Appiah or something like that? He said, you people are complaining. But you were the people in Manchester and places talking about liberation, so what do you want us to do? So I think Joe said, yes, I agree. We were all making the noise. We wanted it. But at no time did we say that Ghana will be the only country to carry the can. Why should we carry all the burden? So these were some of the things that were going on. So when it happened, it's only now that some of us are beginning to understand Kwame Nkrumah a bit. But of course, the powers that be wanted to crush him, so they really seized him because he was too strong for them. And I tell you, the jubilation in town was spontaneous. Somebody took a whole bottle of whiskey and poured it into a gutter. Kwame Nkrumah had been toppled. From then, you didn't need much. There's some people at first didn't believe it, but when they believed it, they jubilated. 1 year on, I remember some officers from home, like they say, when we joined the service, we were told two things. In the mess, among yourselves, don't discuss politics. And the next one was ladies. So we had, in those days, even in the mess, we had ladies' room. If your girlfriend came, another officer will take, the lady to a ladies' room, take her over, and then come and call you. These were the things we're doing. But once we got involved in politics, and I remember very well, in fact, I didn't even mention it, when we were in military academy, Kwame Nkrumah came to visit us as the first group. He came, we didn't have even a small room, but maybe twice this size, and we had a dinner night with Kwame Nkrumah. I have got a picture there. In fact, I should have bought it. I was sitting on his left, and a colleague of mine, his pardon, Major Kwame Asante, was sitting on his right. The commandant was sitting on the other side, and the CEO was sitting at Kwame Asante's side. As soon as we sat down, Kwame Nkrumah asked me, "What's your name?" I said, "Edwin Sam, sir." "From where?" "Secondly." "And you, what's your name?" "Kwame Asante." "From where?" "Oh, I see. Now, oh, Papa Nyawana, who is your father?" Then he turned to Kwame. For the period we had the dinner, he never spoke one English. This is the sort of thing that worried the whites. They wanted to know what he was saying. He was talking freely with us. He never spoke a word of English, apart from this speech he gave. But in that speech, he told us that we have a beautiful organization. We should never get involved in politics. And if we did, we should immediately hand over to civilian organization. Otherwise, we will ruin our organization. This had been told us by the previous CDS, the one before Alexander. I think Alexander even repeated it. General Pele. They all told us, don't get involved in politics in the armed forces. So we got involved now. So we're discussing politics in the mess. And it even became worse. Promotions and things, tribal sentiments, and also when we used to be a beautiful organization, we used to sit together, eat together, go to nightclubs together, and we began to be suspicious of each other. So, this is a Fanti, this is an Ewe, this is an Ashanti, and the Northerners were not even many. So this is the beginning of the ruining of the Ghana Armed Forces.